I'm going to do a quick evaluation. First, I'm going to say, good job, everyone. You did your C1 speech, and they were all really awesome. Seriously. If I had to give a speech in a different language, it would not be good. Okay, so that being said, I completely understand that you guys were nervous, and so a lot of your small mistakes just came from having to be on stage and talk in front of everyone. In fact, right now, I might mess up some words because I'm nervous and talking in front of everyone. I am so sorry. You guys probably have no idea what I just said. Okay, so I guess I'm going to start. As a native speaker, most of the things I can kind of understand what you guys are saying almost all of the time. So I chose a couple of points that I think will help you guys fundamentally speak better. So the first one is prepositional phrases. If you guys don't know what that is or what they are, they're connecting words. They include things like about, on, in. So sometimes you guys mess these things up, mostly because it's really hard if you're not a native speaker to understand what they are. So for instance, in one speech, someone said, thought why we meet each other. But what you really want to say is thought about why. About is a prepositional phrase. And I can't explain to you why you need to use it there, but you do need to use it there. Another thing that you guys like to do, let's see. So this is another big one. You guys mix up your verb tenses. So in English, there's the past and the present and the future. And this is kind of hard because it's kind of like, well, when do I use which one? And I can't tell you how to do that, but you should definitely look it up. So if I did something in the past, you're usually going to add an ed. So instead of, indicate, you want to say indicated. And then instead of I go, I went. Things like that, of that nature. So that's really important because when I'm sitting there listening to you, even though I understand what you're saying, it throws me off a little bit when the verb tenses are not correct. Another thing that's really important is ing verbs. So your ing verbs basically take an action and they turn it into a state of being. But you guys really like to use it as a filler word. So you guys will say maybe having some, maybe taking some, but you can't use ing that way. You can only really use it when you're in a state. So right now I am standing on stage. You guys are sitting over there. So let me see if I can find you an example. Okay, so for instance, one speaker said, I couldn't understanding her point, or I couldn't understanding her message. I couldn't understand her message. So you guys were like, oh, I don't know how to use the past tense, so I'm just gonna throw an ing in there. And that sounds like fun, but you can't do that. So yeah, I would say if you really want to learn that, what you should do is go on the internet. And there's like little games you can play, and I'll be like, oh, let's start with go, I went, etc. I know it sounds really childish, but it's okay because the most childish part of the language is actually the most important part. So if I can't tell you I went somewhere, it doesn't matter if I can tell you about like the economic disparity in Africa because I can't tell you general directions. So I would say for a lot of you guys, your vocabulary is really, really great. In fact, it's amazing. But if you really want to sound like a native speaker, work on really basic things. So continuing from that point, the next thing you guys are really going to work on is enunciation. Out of the people whose speeches I could understand the best, it's because the pronunciation and their enunciation was the best. So when you're working on things like that, this is my suggestion. Go find one native speaker, an actor, an actress, your friend on the street, and just copy them. Okay, just choose one native speaker to sound like, because there's so many accents that if you try to pick up all of them, no one will understand you ever. But if you're consistent, everyone will always understand you, okay? And so that's really important. The next thing is your L's and your R's and your W's and your TH's. Again, this is not something that, it's hard to understand, it's hard to learn how to say them, but it's really important to practice. So a lot of you guys, your L's and your R's are mixed up, which is fine because in Chinese, they kind of sound the same. And it works for you guys. But in English, they are two different sounds. So I don't know how, again, to explain how to learn it. I am not an English teacher. But if you want to learn, go on the internet and just listen over and over again to people who are speaking English. Another one is the sound, like I think. Your guys' kind of sounds like a sh. So I shink. Or maybe when you say I sheet, and it ends up sounding like, shit. So as you can going so well. But as you see, so earlier, one of the people, high schoolers said sheet, and it ended up sounding like not sheet. Right, so you just don't want to confuse those words together. So I would say, if you kind of want an analogy, enunciation and pronunciation is kind of like tones. If I say my tones incorrectly, even if you're like, I guess that's a word, you don't really know, and then you say 听不懂, and then I cry because I don't know what to do anymore. So think of it like this. So if you're ever talking to someone and you know that you're saying the word correctly, but they still don't understand you, it's probably because your pronunciation is incorrect. And enunciation is something, I feel bad for you guys because you learned American English, and Americans like to talk like this when we mumble really loudly when no one can understand what we're saying. But we understand what we're saying, right? So you don't, so I don't have to enunciate because I'm a native English speaker, but for you guys it's really important to enunciate. And then the last thing that you guys want to work on, okay, we talked about congregations, right? You want to congregate all your words. Okay, let me just go through some of the things you guys, some examples of what you guys said, and then we can call it a day. I'm honored to perform or do, not to take a speech. Okay, so in English we also have, it's called subject-to-verb agreement. And I'm not going to get into it, but the point is, if you have a verb, it has to agree with the subject. So I say, he says. I can't, I says. That's just wrong. So a lot of times, if you guys have to pluralize. So one person said, I have a lot of hobby, but it should be, I have a lot of... Okay, so I'm trying to use my speech skills too. Okay, yes, it should be hobbies. I'm a children. I am a child. I'm not a children, because children is the plural form. Someone said, I watched recently this movie. You would have to say, I recently watched this movie. I know someone talked about earlier that in Chinese, like a lot of times you can just put things in different places and it's okay. You cannot do that in English. Yeah, I'm gonna say you can't do that. I'm sorry for that. I apologize for the whole language. Another thing is full, peaceful, stressful. You mostly, I don't know exactly, but I'm gonna say you can only describe something else that's not you as full. Like, you can say it was a stressful situation, but you would say, I am stressed. You can say, I really thought my life would be, I guess you could say my life was peaceful, but you wouldn't say, I'm peaceful. That seems strange. You'd say, I was at peace, maybe is a better way of putting it. Another thing is you want to remember your thes and your a's. So after leaving the army is an important one. Another thing, I don't know, maybe you guys just do it here, but PPT only makes sense in Asian countries. I think if you went to America and said PPT, actually I'm 100% sure no one would know what you're talking about. So for everyone, it's a PowerPoint presentation or a PowerPoint. Okay, so we're gonna just real quick, everyone, a PowerPoint.
PowerPoint.
There we go. Okay, you only have to use that if you ever go to the West. Like, it's okay if we're here and Japan, I'm sure it's gonna be China, cool, no worries. Let's see. Yeah, and again, like I was saying about the pronunciation, if you say effect, it's effect. So for that, this is going to sound really boring, but I do it when I learn tones, so you're going to have to do it anyway. Go to dictionary.com, and then a lady is going to have, like, there's like a little button you can push, and the person will literally say the word for you. She'll go, effect, affect, consecutive. You know, it's very boring, but just repeat after her. Consecutive, effective, and you will sound boring, but correct, and everyone will know what you're saying. After 5 years ago, you want to say after 5 years or 5 years ago. Sloth is how you say that word. Oh, it's for, okay, if you guys were like, I don't know what this romantic comedy is, or what this show is called, a love story, it's usually either a soap opera, if it's very, what's it called, long shao. If it's corny, if it's silly, it's a soap opera. If it's funny, it's a romantic comedy. Or you can just say a love story. Or a television drama. Do cookie. Okay, you know what? I'm good. This is fine. You guys aren't going to remember all this anyway. All right, TMA.